I slammed the bedroom door open with my shoulder. It cracked off the hinges, the wood splitting loud against the silence. She screamed. He jumped out of bed half naked, scrambling for his pants, his bare back flashing in the dim light. And I just stood there, watching. No shouting. No crying. Just silence. The kind of silence that happens when your entire life collapses in one breath. Rewind 48 hours. I'm 72. Frank Miller. Retired military intelligence. Built like a brick even now, though arthritis tries to remind me I'm not 30 anymore. I live in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of place where the grass is always trimmed, flags fly every Sunday, and everyone waves even if they secretly hate you. I married Judith when we were 20. 50 years of marriage. 50. That's 5 decades of Christmas trees, burnt turkey, church on Sundays, and grandkids tearing through the living room. We had our ups and downs, every couple does. But betrayal? I never thought that word would live in our house. Last month, she started acting strange. Not like those cliché new perfume and late night stories. Judith was subtle. Too subtle. She stopped making my tea in the mornings. She forgot to record Jeopardy. She started locking her phone, a woman who could never figure out how to send a group text. That was my first clue. Now, you don't spend 30 years in covert ops without developing instincts. And mine? Screamed that something was off. So I did what I was trained to do: observe, record, and analyze. I installed a hidden camera in the smoke detector above the dining room table. Just to be sure. What I saw 3 days later made my heart twist. It was him. A man I recognized. Broad shoulders, beard, arrogant smile. Jared. 34 years old. My son's old best friend. I used to coach him in Little League Baseball. He called me Uncle Frank. He was sitting at my table, sipping coffee. Judith walked in wearing a robe that I bought her for our 40th anniversary. She touched his arm. Then she kissed him. Not a hello kiss. It was long. Familiar. Shameful. I turned off the video. Sat back. Stared at the walls. My wife. My house. My life. In that moment, something old in me woke up. Something I buried when I left the field. The next morning, I kissed her on the cheek like nothing happened. I went into the garage, unlocked my old military chest, and opened it. There it was. My past. IDs. Old surveillance gear. A black notebook filled with contacts. I picked up my recorder. My laptop. My burner phone. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to plan. If Judith wanted to play games, then I'd show her what it meant to go to war, with someone who had spent decades winning them. The smell of scrambled eggs filled the kitchen. Judith hummed an old Sinatra tune as she moved around, wearing the same soft blue sweater she always wore on Sundays. I sat at the table, pretending to read the newspaper, nodding along. My face was calm. My hands steady. But inside? My mind was already 3 steps ahead. She poured my coffee, kissed my forehead, and asked if I wanted toast. I smiled. Sure, honey. The word tasted like dust. I had already backed up the footage from the hidden camera. Multiple clips. Multiple days. Different clothes. Different times. Same man. Same betrayal. I emailed it to a secure cloud account and encrypted it under a folder named Utility Bills. Anyone else would miss it. I wouldn't. The first phase of any mission is reconnaissance. Know your enemy. I wasn't going to react emotionally. I needed intel. So I began with Jared. He worked for a mid-sized software company downtown. Made good money. Still lived in that rented condo with the rooftop view, the one he bragged about back in the day. His social media was filled with gym selfies, motivational quotes, and pictures of wine glasses taken at a 45-degree angle. He had no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I drove past his office. Parked 2 blocks down. Used an old Canon camera with a telephoto lens. Watched him step outside to take a call, laughing into the wind like he owned the world. I took a few shots. Just in case. Back home, I opened a new notebook. Operation name, A Widowmaker. Day 1, A Surveillance complete. Subject unaware. Day 2 started with a test. I told Judith I had a doctor's appointment across town and wouldn't be home until after 6. At 3:47 p.m., Jared arrived. I watched the live feed on my laptop while parked outside a diner, sipping black coffee. They kissed in the hallway. She took his coat. He carried a bottle of wine. At 5:03 p.m., the bedroom door closed. I didn't flinch. Just wrote down the time. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Davis, a voice answered. It's Frank. I need a favor. A pause. Well, damn. The grave finally called. What do you need? Davis was my old partner from Berlin. He owed me his life. Now it was time to collect. By the end of the night, I had a full dossier on Jared emailed to me. Bank accounts. Passwords. Workplace complaints. Even a sealed report from 2018 where he'd been accused of inappropriate conduct with a junior employee. Settled out of court. No charges filed. But it was enough. Day 3, I began constructing the trap. I created a false investment firm. Bought a domain. Built a website using templates and fake employee bias. Gave myself a name, a John Wells, venture capitalist from Tampa with a focus on emerging tech startups. Then I sent Jared a message through LinkedIn. Hi Jared, came across your profile. Impressive background. We are looking to fund innovative projects with agile leadership. Let's talk. He replied within an hour. Sounds great. Always open to opportunities. When can we connect? Hook. Line. Sinker. I scheduled a Zoom call under my fake name. Used voice modulation software to slightly alter my tone. I wore tinted reading glasses and sat in a room lit only by a desk lamp. I had shaved my beard, changed my posture, slowed my speech. I didn't look like Frank Miller. I looked like someone richer, softer. Gullible. The call lasted 30 minutes. Jared pitched me some nonsense about a wellness app for veterans. The irony made my hands itch. I asked the right questions. Promised to review his materials. Told him I'd be in touch. I ended the call and sat in the dark for 10 minutes. Then I laughed. Quiet, deep, and cold. Judith thought she could play me. Jared thought he found a new investor. But I was just getting started. By the 4th day, Jared was hooked. He messaged me, John Wells, 3 times within 24 hours. He wanted to set up an in-person meeting. Said he was ready to take the next step. I told him I'd be flying into Charlotte that weekend and offered to meet at a quiet coffee shop outside the city. He jumped at the opportunity. Perfect. I chose a place in South End, somewhere with open windows, loud enough to drown out nearby conversations but quiet enough for mine. I sat in the far corner, back to the wall, the way I always used to. My disguise was sharp, a clean-shaven, new clothes, gold watch, fake hearing aid in one ear. My posture was slouched slightly, like a man who had money and nothing to prove. The cane was real, though. That wasn't for show. Jared walked in like he owned the place. Button-down shirt, designer sunglasses, teeth blinding white. He didn't recognize me at all. Not even a flicker. When I stood to shake his hand, he smiled like he'd won the lottery. I bought us both coffee and we talked about his vision. He spewed buzzwords like disruptive and scalable. I listened, nodding, occasionally scribbling in a notepad with my left hand, just enough to seem interested. After 30 minutes, I said I had another meeting and left him with a promise: I'll talk to my partners. You'll hear from me soon. As I walked out, I glanced back. He was already texting. Probably Judith. Amateur. Back in the car, I opened the voice memo app and recorded everything I remembered from our conversation. Key phrases, tone, posture. I wasn't just building a case. I was building a profile. The kind the agency used to train new field agents on. That night, I returned home late. Judith was asleep in bed, the TV still playing some late-night drama. I stood there for a moment, watching her. 50 years. And she gave it all away for a man who couldn't even keep his shirt tucked in. In the kitchen, I sat down and reviewed the surveillance footage from the day. Nothing new. No visits. Probably because Jared had been too busy trying to impress his new investor. I smiled. The next morning, Judith was cheerful. She made waffles. Waffles. The last time she made waffles, Obama was still in office. She kissed me on the cheek, humming again. Something was off. She was trying too hard. She thought she was hiding it well. I decided to give her more rope. I'm going fishing next weekend, I told her casually. Oh, she said, trying not to look too interested. Yeah. Mike invited me out to his cabin. Figured I could use the air. She smiled. That sounds great, Frank. You've been cooped up too long. I smiled back. Exactly. I wasn't going fishing. The next few days were a blur of coordination. I contacted Davis again. This time, I asked for tools. Legal ones. Old friends in cybercrime divisions. Lawyers who owed favors. Private investigators who still worked in the shadows. I set up a shell corporation in Delaware. Nothing illegal, but enough to make that John Wells persona real if anyone dug deeper. The business had a fake history, fake taxes, even a few paid-for reviews online. Jared wouldn't know the difference. Most investors he dealt with were tech bros with too much cash and no brains. Friday rolled around. I packed a small bag, kissed Judith goodbye, and drove not to Mike's cabin, but to a rental office across town. I had set it up as my Charlotte branch. Inside was a table, 2 chairs, a fake logo on the wall, and a laptop preloaded with fake financial data and pitch decks. I called Jared from my burner phone. John Wells here. I'm in town longer than expected. Thought we might talk numbers. He sounded excited. Almost giddy. He arrived 20 minutes early. We shook hands again. I offered him a drink, nothing fancy, just bottled water with a fake label I printed the night before to match the fake company brand. He opened his laptop and started showing slides. I watched. Listened. Let him talk himself into a hole. He revealed too much. Said things about insider access to data, early leaks from corporate clients, even hinted at off-the-books investors who had paid him cash. I pressed record on my phone, the mic facing his side of the table. He had no idea. By the end of the meeting, I had everything I needed to begin dismantling him piece by piece. But I wasn't done yet. As he left, he turned and said, "You gonna make me rich, John?" I can feel it. I nodded. Oh, I will, I said. but not in the way he thought. By the fifth day, I wasn't just building a case, I was building his collapse. Piece by piece, lie by lie, I stacked the bricks of his downfall while he still thought he was climbing toward success. Jared kept messaging John Wells, asking for updates, requesting meetings, sending new pitch decks with inflated numbers and fake client testimonials. I responded with careful interest. Enthusiastic, but not desperate. Just enough to keep him hungry. Meanwhile, back at home, Judith acted like she was living in a romantic drama. She smiled more, played soft jazz in the kitchen, and started baking again, apple pies, banana bread, cinnamon rolls. The house smelled like the 1980s. She thought I was happy. Thought I was finally relaxing in retirement. I let her believe that. One night after dinner, she poured 2 glasses of wine and sat next to me on the couch. "You've been different lately," she said softly. "Oh. Calmer. I like it." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I had built a life with. The woman who once held my hand through cancer treatments, who stayed up with me during night terrors from combat zones. And now she was kissing a man 38 years younger in the house I paid for. "I guess I've just made peace with some things," I said. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. The next day, Davis sent me a new file. A full background check on Judith. I didn't ask for it, but he thought I should see. Nothing criminal, nothing public. But there were things I didn't know. Charges on a hidden credit card. A rental car in another name. A motel 2 towns over. 7 nights over the past year. All paid in cash. She had been at this a long time. I stared at the report for hours. It wasn't just a fling. It was a second life. That night, I sat in the garage, lights off, hands folded in my lap. I remembered our wedding day. The way she cried during her vows. The way I believed every word. At midnight, I got up and opened the old safe in the corner. Inside was a red envelope I hadn't touched in 20 years. It was labeled Nightingale. Nightingale wasn't a person. It was a protocol. An emergency strategy one designed during my last deployment, meant for when trust was broken beyond repair. It was never supposed to be used in civilian life. But this wasn't civilian life anymore. The next morning, I made the first move. I emailed Jared using my real name. Subject line, hello, Jared. The body read. "You don't know me, but I know you. You've been spending time with my wife, Judith. I have video, audio, photos, and records. I'm not here to negotiate. I just want you to understand what's coming. I'm not going to the police. I'm going to be worse." I didn't sign it. I sent it from a throwaway address and deleted the account after 10 minutes. That afternoon, Jared didn't show up for work. That evening, Judith got a call and stepped outside to answer. I watched from the window. Her face changed. Her body stiffened. When she came back in, she was pale. I said nothing. The next day, Jared called John Wells, begging to talk. Said something had come up, asked if we could meet in person again. I agreed. Saturday. 10 a.m. I reserved a private room at a corporate co-working space downtown. Soundproof. No cameras. No staff. Jared arrived on time. I was already seated. He looked terrible, hair messy, eyes bloodshot, shirt half untucked. He held a folder in his hand and placed it on the table. "I don't know what this is," he said, "but I'm sorry." "Okay?" I didn't mean to cause trouble. I leaned back. Calm. Watching. "I don't think you know who you're dealing with," I said. His hands trembled. "Look, I'll stop seeing her. I swear. Just, please don't ruin me. I slid a small flash drive across the table. That's your copy, I said. Everything I have. Consider it a gift. He didn't touch it. What do you want from me? I already have it, I said. You gave it to me every time you opened your mouth. I stood up, fixed my jacket, and walked toward the door. Don't call her again. Don't call me. And if you think about running, don't. I'll find you. I left him there, in that silent room, with only his folder, my flash drive, and the weight of every bad choice he ever made. I didn't hear from Jared for 4 days after the meeting. Not a single message. Not through John Wells. Not through any of his usual channels. I monitored his online presence. His social media accounts went dark. He didn't show up at his office. He didn't even use his gym pass. It was like he disappeared. For a moment, I thought he might have run. I hoped not. I wasn't done yet. Judith noticed my mood shift. She thought it was about the fishing trip I never took. Mike said you didn't come, she said, casually folding laundry on the bed. Had car trouble, I replied. Didn't want to bother him. She didn't press it. But she was more careful. Less cheerful. The fake domesticity she'd been playing it began to crack. She spent more time on her phone. I could hear her voice through the door some nights, soft, urgent. She was worried. And she should have been. Because I had only just begun. I had the data. The recordings. The dossiers. But it was time to destroy the illusion. I spent the next 3 days preparing the setting. I called both of our children, David and Lisa. Told them I was planning a surprise celebration for our 50th wedding anniversary. A dinner. Private. Elegant. Just close family and a few old friends. They were thrilled. Said they'd bring the grandkids, even fly in from out of state. Judith, when I told her, nearly cried. 50 years, she whispered. I can't believe it. Neither could I. I rented a venue, one of those countryside houses people book for weddings and retirements. White walls, wooden beams, soft lighting. I catered it through a friend who owed me. Tables, flowers, champagne, music. I even dug out our wedding photo, had it enlarged, and framed. It stood at the entrance like a relic from a past that never really existed. The morning of the dinner, I dressed in my best suit. Judith wore a silver dress I hadn't seen in years. She looked beautiful. Older, softer, sadder maybe, but beautiful. For a second, I almost felt something. But it passed. The guests arrived one by one. Smiles, hugs, congratulations. Judith beamed. Everyone praised her. 50 years with the same man. What a miracle. What a love story. I stayed silent, smiling, thanking people. I gave a toast before dinner, short, simple. To shared memories. And the truth behind them. Some laughed, thinking it was just me being poetic. Then came dessert. I walked up to the microphone again. This time, I brought a small black remote from my jacket pocket. Thank you, everyone, for being here, I said. Before we end this evening, I have one more surprise. Judith, this one's for you. She looked confused. Nervous. I pressed the button. The screen behind me lit up. A video started playing. It was muted, just visuals. Judith. In our bedroom. Judith. In the hallway. Judith. In the kitchen. With Jared. Kissing. Laughing. Touching. Gasps echoed through the room. My daughter dropped her fork. My son stared like he couldn't process it. I didn't look at Judith. I didn't need to. When the video ended, the room was silent. This is what 50 years built, I said. This is what it was traded for. I walked off stage. The guests didn't follow. Some whispered. Some looked away. Lisa began crying. David tried to speak to me, I waved him off. Judith stood there, frozen. The dinner ended without goodbyes. People left quietly. The celebration was over. I drove home alone. Judith came back hours later. I was in the garage, sitting in the dark. She opened the door, stood silently for a minute, then said, "Why would you do that?" I turned to her, eyes calm. Because the world deserved to know. She didn't respond. Just closed the door and went upstairs. I stayed in the garage until dawn. The next morning, she was gone. When I walked into the house the morning after the dinner, it was still. Too still. No coffee brewing, no soft music playing, no sounds of Judith moving through the kitchen. Her suitcase was gone. Closet half empty. Just like that, 50 years vanished into a trunk with wheels and a shattered illusion. I didn't feel relief. Not joy either. What I felt was motion. The kind of forward momentum that comes after you survive an explosion. Your ears are ringing, your body's shaking, but your legs move because they must. There's still work to do. I made breakfast. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Sat in silence and watched the sun crawl across the living room floor. Then I opened my laptop and resumed my campaign. Jared hadn't called. Hadn't written. But I knew that wouldn't last. At 11:37 a.m., I got an email. Not to Frank Miller. Not to John Wells. Just an anonymous sender with a message. I need to fix this. Let's meet. I didn't reply. At 3:04 p.m., another message. I'll tell her everything. I'll confess. Just give me a chance to fix it. Still, I said nothing. At 5:10 p.m., one more. She's gone. I can't find her. Please, I didn't mean for this to happen. That's when I knew I had him exactly where I wanted. I forwarded the emails to a contact I hadn't used in 20 years, retired IRS investigator, now working freelance. I asked him to dig deep. Specifically into Jared's business dealings. The bank transfers. Off-the-books payments. And the tax filings from the past 5 years. 3 days later, the report came back. And it was beautiful. Jared had been running multiple shell companies. Money passed between accounts like a magic trick. Consulting fees, donations, private equity grants that never existed. All clean on paper. All rotten in truth. Exactly what I needed. I printed a full copy, bound it, and couriered it to a friend who still worked in the district attorney's office. No signature. No sender. Just a note, F for review. Possible tax fraud. Anonymous tip. Next, I targeted the company Jared worked for. I created an anonymous tip line submission through their HR department, attaching audio files from our John Wells meetings. I highlighted the moment he bragged about insider leaks and cash payments. Then I waited. The fallout came fast. On Thursday, Jared was suspended pending investigation. His name was stripped from their website. By Friday, half his colleagues had unfollowed him on LinkedIn. Monday morning, I drove past his condo. For sale sign in the window. No lights on. I stopped across the street and watched. He came outside 10 minutes later. Looked thinner. Paler. like someone who hadn't slept in a week. He stood on the curb for a long time, staring at nothing. Then he lit a cigarette and just stood there, shoulders sagging under the weight of every lie he'd ever told. I didn't pity him. I pitied the boy he used to be. The one who used to play catch with my son in the yard. But the man standing there now? That man had earned every ounce of misery. At home, the house was quieter than ever. No phone calls. No visitors. I called Lisa. She didn't answer. David sent a single text, "I need time." Fair enough. Let them sort it out. I kept busy. Cleaned the garage. Donated old tools. I even fixed the front steps, something Judith had nagged me about for years. Now, without her voice in my ear, I did it in peace. Then, on Wednesday, I got the call. It was a woman's voice. Calm. Professional. "Mr. Miller, this is Rachel Webb from the State Tax Investigation Unit. We received an anonymous report recently, and I'd like to ask a few follow-up questions." I paused. "Of course," I said. "How can I help?" She didn't know I was the tipster. She just wanted verification of Jared's connection to certain funds. I gave her polite, vague answers. Enough to keep things moving. Enough to keep the wolves on his heels. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat by the window. I thought about Judith. Where she might be. What she might be feeling. Shame? Rage? Regret? Didn't matter. She had made her choice. And I had delivered the consequences. A week passed. The quiet in the house became normal. I no longer waited for the creak of Judith's footsteps upstairs or the sound of her voice humming Sinatra. The space she used to fill was just empty. And it suited me. I kept things routine. Breakfast at 7. Walks at 8. Repairs in the garage through the afternoon. And every night, whiskey by the window, watching the street, the silence, the peace I had earned. Then, on the 9th day, she came back. I was in the backyard, trimming the hedges when I heard the front door creak. Not knock, just open. I stepped around the corner, clippers still in hand. Judith stood in the entryway, suitcase in one hand, her coat folded over the other. Her eyes looked smaller than I remembered, sunken from stress and lack of sleep. Her lipstick was faded, and her hair looked like she'd stopped brushing it days ago. We stared at each other. Not a word. She broke first. "I had nowhere else to go," she said. "Lisa won't return my calls. David told me to get help. And Jared," she swallowed. "He's ruined." I didn't say anything. Just leaned the clippers against the wall and walked past her into the house. She followed. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said behind me. "I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened." In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table. She remained standing, clutching her coat like it was armor. "I made mistakes," she continued. "Horrible mistakes. I let something stupid and temporary ruin everything we built. And I'm sorry." I sipped the water. Slowly. Let her sit in the silence. "You didn't just ruin what we built," I finally said. "You poisoned the roots. The foundation. There's nothing left to repair." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't soften. "Not anymore. You were the only thing I thought I could trust," I said. "I survived war zones, betrayals in the field, friends dying with my name on their lips. But I always came home thinking you were my anchor." She looked down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I was lonely." "So was I snapped. "You don't think getting old is lonely? Watching your kids build new lives while yours feels stuck in the review?" But I didn't go chasing something younger. I didn't set fire to what we built. She took a step forward. Can't we try? Therapy, counseling, something. Please. No. She blinked. Just like that? I stood. You had your chance. When you walked into that motel. When you let him into our bed. When you smiled at me the next morning like nothing happened. That was your chance. And you chose. I walked past her, stopped at the foot of the stairs. There's a guest room. You can stay there until you find a place. But this, us, it's done. I didn't look back. She didn't move. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in 50 years. She cried. I could hear her through the walls. But I didn't open the door. Judith stayed in the guest room. She didn't try to come back to our bed again. She didn't even ask. I think, deep down, she knew the door was closed forever. She kept to herself. Cooked quietly, moved through the house like a shadow. We didn't eat together. We didn't talk much. There were mornings she'd leave early and not return until dark. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't care. I was focused on something else. Jared had gone silent. No more emails. No new posts. But my sources told me the investigation was growing. The IRS had opened a file. His former employer had forwarded the audio clips to internal compliance, and word was circulating that they were building a legal case. And then, an opportunity appeared. One of the shell companies linked to Jared's name, an LLC registered under an alias, had a checking account that hadn't been touched in months. But last week, $42,000 moved through it in a single day. Money came in from a private donor, unregistered, and left within hours to a different holding company. It looked like laundering. My contact flagged it immediately. This is enough to bring him in, he told me over the phone. If someone makes a statement. If there's a witness. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I can get one, I said. That night, I cooked dinner for the first time in weeks. Just enough for two. Pasta, wine, garlic bread. I didn't say a word, just left it all on the table and waited. Judith came down eventually, surprised, but cautious. She sat across from me, and we ate in silence. Halfway through the meal, I spoke. I need your help. She paused, fork midway to her mouth. With what? With Jared. Her hand trembled. She set down the fork. I don't know where he is, she said. I don't need his location. I need a statement. She said nothing. He made you promises, didn't he? I continued. Talked about investing, building something together, a future? She nodded slowly. You still have those messages? Another nod. I want them. Silence. And I want you to write a declaration. Say he solicited money under false pretenses. Say he encouraged you to invest in something fake. She looked like she was going to protest. I held up a hand. I know what he did to you. Same thing he did to others. I'm giving you a chance to help clean it up. She stared at me for a long time. Then, finally, she nodded. I'll do it. It took 3 days to prepare. She handed me the printouts of every message, every email, every promise he made. Most were foolish, emotional, but some contained details. Mentions of bank accounts, potential deals, timelines. And the statement she wrote was surprisingly honest. She even called herself a willing participant in a manipulated emotional scheme. I didn't expect that kind of self-awareness from her. But maybe she still had some dignity left to preserve. I forwarded it all to my contact. 2 days later, A formal request was issued to open a full federal investigation into Jared's finances. And a subpoena followed. They would take it from here. On Sunday morning, I stepped outside and found the newspaper already on the porch. Front page headline, above the fold. Local tech consultant under federal investigation for fraud, embezzlement? His name in bold. His picture too. I brought the paper inside and laid it on the kitchen table. Judith came in moments later, saw the headline, and stopped. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We both knew it was over. For him. For her. For us. 2 days after the newspaper hit, I got the first call. It was Lisa. Her voice was tired, brittle around the edges. "Dad," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say before." I let her speak. I didn't know Mom could do something like that. And the video. God. There was a long pause. "You okay?" she finally asked. "I'm steady," I said. "That's enough." We talked for 20 minutes. Nothing heavy. Just enough to remind us we were still family. Later that night, David called too. Shorter conversation. Awkward. But when he ended with, "I love you, Dad," it was enough. Slowly, the fracture began to heal. But not for everyone. Judith was still in the house. Still in the guest room. She moved like someone who knew she didn't belong anymore. She cooked less, cleaned less. She avoided eye contact. Most days, she didn't speak at all. And then, one evening, she knocked on my door. First time in weeks. I didn't answer right away. Let her stand there, hand on the doorknob, probably rehearsing what to say. Finally, I opened it. She stood in a robe, hair damp from a shower, eyes swollen from crying. "I'm leaving," she said. I said nothing. I found a small place, across town. Month-to-month lease. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know. I nodded. When? Tomorrow. She looked like she wanted me to ask her to stay. I didn't. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "For everything." I nodded again. "Goodbye, Frank." She walked away. I closed the door. The next morning, she left quietly. No note. No goodbye. Just the sound of a car starting and tires rolling down the street. I stood at the window and watched her go. That afternoon, a knock came at the front door. I expected mail, maybe a neighbor. It wasn't. It was Jared's mother. She looked older than I remembered. Short gray hair, worn blouse, tired eyes. She held a small paper bag in one hand and a photo in the other. "Frank," she said, eyes watery. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Then stepped aside. We sat in the living room. The silence was thick. "I know what happened," she said finally. "I know everything. And I don't blame you." She handed me the photo. It was from a barbecue 15 years ago. Our kids laughing in the background. Jared holding a football. Me standing beside him, smiling. "He wasn't always like this," she whispered. "He used to be good. But he lost his way." I nodded, staring at the photo. "I don't expect you to forgive," she said. "I just wanted you to know. I think you did the right thing." She stood, hesitated, then hugged me. It was stiff. Brief. But it meant something. When she left, I held the photo for a long time. That night, I didn't drink. I sat in the quiet and let the stillness settle. I had won. But winning never feels like you think it will. It feels like emptiness. It feels like starting over. A week passed since Judith left. The house settled into a new rhythm. Mornings were mine again, quiet, steady. The coffee brewed exactly how I liked it. The remote stayed where I left it. The silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. Earned. I spent the time fixing things. Not just around the house, though the loose gutter and the creaking porch step finally got handled, but inside myself, too. I'd lived in noise for so long. War, secrets, shadows. Then family. Then betrayal. And now, clarity. People started coming around again. Lisa dropped by with the grandkids one Saturday. David brought me dinner one night and didn't ask any questions. Neighbors waved longer than usual. The storm had passed. And yet, there was something unfinished. Not with Judith. Not with Jared. With me. One morning, I sat in the garage, flipping through old photo albums. Our honeymoon. The birth of the kids. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. Moments frozen in time, before everything cracked. I looked at my younger self and tried to remember what he thought life would be. Then I found a letter. It was tucked inside the back cover of an album. Yellowed with age, folded twice. Judith's handwriting. Frank, it began. If you're reading this, it means you were cleaning, something you always said you'd do but never did. I almost smiled. The letter was dated 20 years ago. I don't know what the future holds for us, it read. But I hope we grow old together. I hope we still laugh over burnt toast and argue over where to put the Christmas lights. I hope you still look at me like you did when we were 20. And if one day we forget why we started, I hope we find our way back. I folded the letter carefully and put it away. Some parts of her were real ones. But that woman, the one who wrote that letter, was gone. That afternoon, I got a call. From someone I hadn't heard from in decades. Her name was Evelyn. We'd met briefly when I was stationed in Berlin. She'd worked as a translator. Sharp, kind, a laugh that made you feel lighter. Nothing ever happened between us, timing was never right. But we'd exchanged letters for a few years after. Then life moved on. But now, after all this time, her voice was exactly as I remembered. I saw the article, she said. Didn't realize you were still in Charlotte. Still standing, I replied. She chuckled. Well, so am I, sort of. We talked for an hour. About nothing. About everything. About how the world had changed, how we had changed. At the end, she said, if you're ever in Arizona, you owe me a coffee. I said I'd think about it. The next morning, I booked a flight. Not to run. Not to escape. Just to see what came next. Before I left, I stood at the front door and looked back at the house. The life. The weight of everything it held. Then I closed the door and walked away.